Hey there, it's me, Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access. Link in the comment, thanks. Saturday, July 25th. I had worried so much about Kevin's discovery the day before that I hadn't thought much about today. Maybe that was just as well. Somehow, receiving another makeover didn't thrill me as much as Mrs. Cameron assumed it would. It comforted me to know that my role model Julie, the eternal tomboy with a few feminine frills, probably wouldn't be too excited about it either. My mom came to spend the day with Sarah Beth, and the man from the ranch would stay with Roger. I made sure to shave extra close, then I put on base makeup. Sarah Beth thought that if I asked the beautician to let me wear my own base makeup because of a skin condition, I wouldn't have to worry about her discovering my beard. I wore an extra-large men's white shirt to cover my larger padded breasts that I would need later so the gown would fit better, a denim skirt, and sandals. I rolled up the shirt sleeves past my elbows, and wore a clunky bracelet that Sarah loaned me, and I pinned a blue ribbon clip onto my wig. Soon Mrs. Cameron had me in the Lincoln SUV driving to the dress shop. The seamstress had done her job well. It fit both beautifully and comfortably. She made a few notes for some quick little adjustments, and then we stopped at a tea room for lunch before the trip to the beauty parlor. Lunch was fun in a sad sort of way. Mrs. C told me stories about Roger when he was a little boy. They would have totally embarrassed him had he heard. It was sad to think that before too many months passed, memories would be all she had. One thing made me perk up my ears. She told me that their family had a charitable trust, the Cameron Foundation. They were changing the emphasis on it to be a scholarship fund for young people who had experienced catastrophic illnesses. She said that eventually the fund would become a memorial fund in Roger's honor. She seriously hoped that when Sarah Beth was ready for college that she would apply for a Cameron scholarship, since it would cover all her expenses. That started my mind racing. Both of us had good GPAs. If I could get scholarship into the physical therapy program here at the university and Sarah Beth could get a full ride, too, maybe we could get married sooner than we had planned. That solitaire diamond ring that I had encouraged Mrs. Cameron to buy may find its way to Sarah Beth's ring finger in a year instead of several years. Of course, I couldn't tell Sarah Beth about this yet. This put me in a much better mood. The beauty salon, not surprisingly, looked classy and expensive. Miss Fiona, the woman in charge, likewise looked classy and expensive. The beauty stations were well screened, so I didn't feel too self-conscious when she asked me to remove my wig. Then she brought in my new one that Mrs. C had ordered. It was a beauty. The thick, wavy reddish-brown curls were almost a perfect match to Sarah Beth's hair. The kids at school might not even know the difference. I beamed when they put it on me and adjusted it. Then Miss Fiona removed it, covered my naked cranium with a scarf, and said that they would put the wig back on later, after my facial and makeup. Facial? What did that mean? Miss Fiona, I whispered. I just as soon wouldn't have a facial. I have some complexion problems anyway, and I'd feel better if you just worked on the foundation makeup that I already have on. It's okay, honey. Don't be embarrassed around me. I see it all. Birthmarks, scars, whatever, they don't bother me. And I'll turn you so that Mrs. Cameron doesn't see. Maybe it was time for truth. Or partial truth, anyway. It's nothing like that. It's a hormonal imbalance. I have facial hair. Mom teases me that it's what I get for being an athletic girl, but the doctors say it's just hormones, and I'll grow out of it. Maybe we can wax it off, she suggested. It's really pretty widespread, I said, trying not to wince. I prefer just covering it up. Sure, dear. But let me go ahead with the facial. Your problem will be our little secret. Fiona was persistent. Finally, I agreed. She cleaned off my makeup and rubbed my beard against the grain. She frowned, but said, "Don't worry, dear. It'll be our little secret." Did she just mean my facial hair, or did she guess I was a boy? I was afraid to ask. Soon my face was covered with some sort of green goop that felt cool and pleasant, and my eyes had cucumber slices on them. I felt like a salad. It was comfortable, though. The tensions of the past few days seemed to slide away, and I was either asleep or very close to it. Miss Fiona had gone to help other customers. Finally, she came back and cleaned off the green stuff. My face felt nice, clean, and relaxed. She applied more base makeup to me, covering up my telltale whiskers. She called Mrs. C over for a consultation on colors and stuff. "Would you like to see her lashes a little longer?" Miss Fiona asked her. "I have some very nice sets that don't look artificial at all." Mrs. Cameron agreed, and the beautician went back to get a little plastic box. She applied glue just above my lashes and glued another set on, both lower and upper. I could see the silly things. They partially blocked my vision, and did even more so when she applied mascara. She used a hand mirror to show me the results. She was right, they didn't look fake, just long and pretty. Then I felt her apply something warm and thick to my eyebrows. "Wait!" I cried. "I just had my brows waxed last weekend, and I don't want them any smaller." The beautician explained to me that the last treatment had left one brow thicker than the other, and the thinner brow longer than the first. She just wanted to even them up. I was resigned to my fate. I didn't bother to argue. A few minutes later, rip, more brow hairs sacrificed to the beauty gods. Again, the look in the hand mirror. They did look better. For a girl. But my transition back to manhood just got a little harder. Fiona did a beautiful, subtle job with eye makeup, cheek color, and my lips. I had to admit that I had never looked prettier. Of course, I looked even better with the wig on. Miss Fiona worked on the bulky mass of hair to bring into a dramatic upsweep, held up with jeweled clips, and with tendrils hanging down. She said, "Annie, dear, I'd like to call Betty, our nail tech, over. Your nails are lovely, but a little too flashy for a formal dinner. Would you mind it if we put new color on, something more subtle?" I agreed, but said that I wanted to stick with my trademark blue, in some shade or the other. I ended up choosing a very pale shade, which Betty applied to fingers and toes as Fiona finished my party hair. Betty reshaped my nails, cutting them from blunt tips rounded at the ends to oval tips. It made them seem a little less huge, which was fine by me. When Fiona finished with my hair, she let me get a good look at myself. I had always thought since my first makeover, I looked like a pleasant but plain girl, which pretty well describes Julie, who I was trying to impersonate. All I could say looking in the mirror was, "Wow." I still wouldn't win a beauty contest, but I wouldn't run for mistake either. In spite of my ordinary features, I looked classy and elegant, and I was still just wearing the man's white shirt and simple skirt. I hugged Fiona. "Thank you, Fiona. I've never looked this good before. I love it." Mrs. Cameron smiled. After Mrs. C charged the makeover expenses, we drove back to Hope Haven, and carried my clothes for the evening upstairs. Wendy and her mom were in the lobby. Wendy looked me over and whistled. When we got to the room, both Mom and Sarah said, "Wow." But after her first smile, Sarah looked a little concerned. "Your eyebrows, they waxed them again, didn't they?" I knew what she was thinking, and she was right. I thought the same thing. They were going to be a big problem just a week from today. So I explained that Fiona was just evening them out, trying to stay in character. I'm sorry, Annie, they look nice, Sarah said. It's just that eyebrow hair is delicate, and after too much waxing it might not grow back. I really wish she hadn't said that. But then she smiled. You really do look great, sis, doesn't she, Aunt Fran? Mom agreed, then pulled out her camera. I hammed for a few shots before I went to the bathroom to take off the skirt and shirt, and change into my hose, panties, and bra for the evening. When I came out, Mrs. C and Mom helped slip the dress over my head so it wouldn't mess up my hairdo. Dress in place, Mrs. C helped put on the diamond earrings, the solitaire ring, and the pearl necklace. I stepped into my heels, and was ready to go. Of course, Mom was firing off pictures like crazy. Sarah called me over while Mrs. Cameron went out to tell her husband we were nearly ready. If it comes to a time that a kiss seems appropriate, just be Annie and don't worry about Mark, okay? I won't be jealous. Just have a great time. She handed me my purse. I kissed Mom and Sarah on the cheek as we left. When we went downstairs, Mr. Cameron stood behind Roger's wheelchair. They both looked at Mrs. C and me and smiled. Mr. Cameron stepped over, took my hand, and kissed it. Annie Holding, it is so nice to meet you. You have been such a blessing to both my wife and Roger. Thank you so much for going out with us this evening. Thank you, I smiled. I'm just so glad to have the opportunity. I'm looking forward to a lovely evening. Both Roger and Mr. Cameron were dressed in expensive Western-cut formal dinner attire, with lizard skin boots. An expensive Stetson covered Roger's bald, scarred head, and Mr. C held a matching one in his hand. After loading Roger into the Lincoln using the wheelchair lift, I sat in back with him as his parents rode in front. Roger, I said softly with a grin, wouldn't you rather us go boogie somewhere where the kids hang out? We had teased each other about that earlier. Maybe we can sneak out later, you suppose? He grinned back. Actually, Roger's condition was starting to deteriorate. I didn't know whether it was the cancer coming back in his brain, or just the effects of the chemo and radiation, but he was weaker, more slouched, and talked less clearly. Still, though, he was alert and happy. Thank you, Annie. I know this may be a bit stuffy for you, but it makes my parents happy to have this kind of dinner. And me, too, but just because of the company. I like the company, too, Roger, both you and your folks. And this isn't stuffy for me, it's a totally new experience. We aren't in the country club set, you know. Just keep me from drinking the finger bowl, okay? I held his hand. We pulled into the country club. Under the canopy, we parked and unloaded Roger. We were escorted to a private dining room with wood-paneled walls, candles on the tables, fine linen, silver service, the whole bit. The salads had fancy greens and blue cheese crumbles in the dressing, the soup was tasty and rich, and the steaks were big, thick, and cooked just right. Mr. C had carried them from his ranch in their corporate jet. I just relaxed and we all had a great time, with the Camerons telling me funny stories about Roger, and Roger telling me about his parents. I don't know if the patrons in the regular dining hall heard us or not, but our laughter got pretty loud. And yes, I kissed him, softly and gently, on the lips. He just swallowed and said, "Thank you, Annie. I've had my dream date now. Roger, maybe we can sneak out and boogie later in the week, huh?" I suggested. Cool, he grinned. Mrs. C came upstairs with me and helped me undress. I unfastened the diamond earrings from my lobes. "Would you take the jewelry tonight, Mrs. Cameron?" I asked. I feel uncomfortable being responsible for something that expensive. Please subscribe for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.